Good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Carolinas Weather Group. We're happy to have you along here on the August 12th edition. I almost said September. I was trying to outdate myself here. The August 12th edition. Welcome to the show tonight. And we're going to be talking about storm chasing in the plains. We have some great guests along with us. We have Vaughn Caster on, as well as Darren Stephens, who are both storm chasers out in the Oklahoma area. I think most of the time they're in the Tulsa area.
I think we lost Scotty. We'll get off to a good start tonight. Scotty said he was having internet problems earlier, so I guess maybe we lost him for a second there.
There, I'm back.
Okay, all right, we got Vaughn back.
I tried to switch my camera on, guys, and it cut me off there. So go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, I was just going. We lost Scotty apparently here. He froze up, so we'll give him a second to get back on. While we're waiting, hey, I think he was kind of giving you an introduction there, Vaughn. Why don't you tell us now which you're a storm chaser in the plains, but you work for, and Scotty keeps all this information. That's why I did not do any research. But and you also you chase for one of the news channels out there, also, correct?
Yeah, we me and Darren, which should be on here pretty soon, we chase for Channel 6 out of Tulsa. We have a sister station in Oklahoma City called Channel 9, and they're owned by our same company. And so we kind of share chasing responsibilities between the two stations, and that way we can cover all of Oklahoma. But it works out well.
All right. Awesome. And like I said, Scotty, when he gets back, he's probably going to have lots of questions because he was kind of keeping he usually does our hosting duty, so I'm sort of winging it by play here. But while we wait on everybody else to kind of catch back up, I guess let's just start off with this past season. Did you feel like it was more active? Were you guys out doing more chasing this year? Was it less active than previous years?
It was significantly more active, not tornadic-wise in our area, although we did have a few, but severe weather-wise, it was. I think we chased a total of 55 days this year, and that's pretty active for around here. So, and that's not counting going to other states. That's just for the local stations.
Are you kidding me? I'd give anything to have 55 active days.
That's very active. I mean, after 2014 and 2013, and even going back to 12, there were a few active days in that time period, but as a whole, it was pretty slow. So this last year was a welcome relief, especially with all the rain we got.
Right. Yeah, that I think I have a feeling that once we what you call green up the landscape out there a little bit more and kind of get get this moisture building again, I think we might actually start seeing a little bit more activity again, like we had in years past.
Yeah.
Scotty, I see you're back. I kind of winged it for a little bit. We talked about the season. I know you probably had some more questions that you could you kind of had lined up, so I'll let you go ahead and take back over.
He looks like he can't hear.
Nope, I guess not.
There he goes.
All right. He said he was having connectivity issues earlier today, so shout out to AT&T. You guys are doing great tonight. They're on it. But anyway, yeah, I think we'll hopefully get, well, hopefully in a sense of us weather geeks get more active. I guess that wouldn't be too hopeful for some of the residents. Let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you always got to be careful about how you say that, but as if it's active out in the open plains, nobody cares about that. So
that's right. We could tear up some wheat fields. But now, Vaughn, I know you work for the station. How much area do you guys cover chasing for them?
We cover what we call green country around here, which is basically we'll go out to I-35, which is west of Tulsa, maybe 90 miles, and then we'll go south down to probably another 50 miles to 70 miles south, and then of course over to the Arkansas border and up to the Kansas border, and over a few counties into Arkansas and Kansas. But That's about the area we cover. If you're familiar at all with Tulsa and the northeast Oklahoma area, so basically you got from Wichita to Springfield to Fort Smith to, let's say, McAllister, Oklahoma, to Oklahoma City, back up to Wichita, that area.
All right. Me and Scotty know a little bit about the area. We were just out there this past February. We went to the Tornado Summit out in Oklahoma City.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Were you there?
No, I was not there, but I had other friends. I couldn't make it this year, but I had other friends that were there, and they said it was pretty awesome.
I was gonna say, I hate that we didn't get to meet up while you were there. Now I know that's who you cover for. That's the kind of area you cover for the station. But what about yourself? How far out will you travel to go storm chasing?
Well, we've gone as far as Florida to cover hurricanes, and then as far west as, west of Boise City, Oklahoma, which is out in the very panhandle of Oklahoma, Dodge City, west of Dodge City. Usually get the better looking tornadoes up in that area because you don't have as much moisture up there, and it seems like it's easier to get tornadoes when you got everything else is in good agreement. So, and then of course I've been into Iowa and Nebraska, so I'll go pretty much anywhere. It depends on what kind of day it is. If it's a high risk, I probably won't chance it because those usually fall apart. But
yeah, we here in North Carolina, I got a feeling we're never going to have any good tornado chasing weather again because they've done away with C-text. There was always the running joke around here. I tell people all the time, if it says C-text, I'm out, man. We're going to go do this because that's what happens around here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we've never chased north of the border. Ever done any Canadian chasing?
Oh, I'd love to do that. That is a dream because there's some pretty good area up there to chase. But one of these days I will.
All right. I see Ricky has finally joined us.
Yeah, sorry everyone. I apologize for being a little bit late, but we were working on some things at work, and then I got home late. So, yeah, it's been a slightly busy day in the.
Vaughn, in case you don't know, this is kind of how Scotty usually does the hosting. Ricky kind of does a lot of the questions along with Scotty, and so Ricky's like the backup if something happens to Scotty. And as you can see, they were both not here. So you get me feeling like totally on a whim.
Hey, you're doing pretty good, Joey.
I think Scotty's still at the beach or something, isn't he, Joey?
No, he's here. He's just dropping in and out. Apparently, he has bad connection. So.
All right. Well, he got your internet. Usually, right, Joey's the one with bad internet issues, but.
Yeah. So, Ricky, what we talked about so far, we've talked about the areas that he covers, who he chases for, some of that. We talked a little bit about how this season was a little bit more active, maybe not tornado-wise, but severe weather-wise at least. I'll let you kind of take over from here, Mr. TV guy.
I can jump in. So why don't we talk a few more questions, kind of baseline stuff, and then maybe we'll jump into some stories, Vaughn, because I'm sure you've got a few, and our viewers always love hearing the stories from over the years of the things you've seen and experienced and your thoughts about them. So
yeah, you betcha.
But talking about, specifically your local area, because Joey was mentioning north of the border, what's the typical atmosphere? I mean, are you guys kind of seen locally as maybe a little bit more advanced than some of the other chasers, or do you get questions a lot of times from more inexperienced chasers or people who haven't been out saying, how can I do this? How can I go out and be like you?
Hopefully they don't want to be like me, but it's those questions come up all the time. We just this year we just got our trucks wrapped by the station, so the publicity that we get is a whole lot more now. But those questions come up all the time. You try to, if it's somebody that you can tell that has some background and is not just somebody that wants to go out there and clog up the roads, then you try to get with them and tell them, to try to go get some schooling from like Skywarn or the National Weather Service puts on classes every year in almost every county in Oklahoma. So that's how you go about. I think that's the best way to go about it, and then they can follow up with their local emergency management guys and maybe get some kind of start in that category.
Yeah, I love that because it's not when we have this problem all the times, as you probably know, with people on social media and all the media meteorologists or social media meteorologists that come along, and my opinion is just kind of dismissing them and saying that there's no good in them isn't maybe the best way to do it because if they're interested, that's step one. I mean, we've got them hooked already, so don't try and squash their bug while they're still interested in it.
Right. Yeah. You never want to discourage anybody. I don't think, but yeah, you just kind of point them in the National Weather Service is a great way to start because they put on some great informative. Mainly, they do it for the local spotters, and so but anybody's welcome to come to those, and it's very, very informative because I think we got probably a couple of the best National Weather Service offices in the nation, as in Tulsa and Norman, and there's a couple guys out of Tulsa. Steve Piltz is one of them, and they put on a really amazing and very informative program for everybody, and I'm sure it goes so they try to keep it a little bit level-headed, in the shows to where people can understand. They don't really get into a lot of the meteorological terms, but it's very, very informative. I learn everything. Every time I go, I learn something more. So.
Yeah, we had one locally here where all of our station meteorologists, myself included, went out, and we always learned something as well. What's the attendance numbers like for a Skywarn class out there? Because in Charlotte, locally, when we had them, there was maybe 50 or so people. Was it much higher in Oklahoma?
No, I'd say it's about that number. That's probably a good average on the bigger. I say the bigger cities. I live in a little city, Muskogee, which is only about 50,000 people, and that's about the kind of attendance we get here. In Tulsa areas, it may be a little bit higher, and then of course your other towns that are not as big, probably a little bit smaller.
But I would imagine.
Oh, you cut out on me. What was that? We're froze up here.
Yeah, I think Ricky's dropping out now.
There we go. I'm back.
We hear you, but I think we lost Ricky.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This is a great show tonight. We're doing well. Ricky, you might want to try closing out of your camera. Because we are getting nothing from you.
Just more really be chasers.
And then there he goes. Okay. Anyway, I was actually trying to read through tweets to make sure we didn't have anything. I didn't hear his last question. Well, give him a second here. I think he's coming back.
We're back, I think, maybe.
All right. Yep, there you are. Now we can hear you.
Check.
Can you hear us? Yes. Okay.
Gotcha.
We hear you. Go. All right. You're good.
All right. We'll try this again. Live TV and radio and everything else. It's the fun times. Segue. Let's go from that. Val, or excuse me, Vaughn. When a lot of things happen out maybe in the field that aren't expected, like internet issues. Do you guys run into that a lot, where you don't have signals in a lot of places?
Yeah, that happens. It's becoming, as you probably know, more and more infrequent. But we have a system in our truck that I think we have about 5 or 6 different carriers, and so we rarely lose signal on our video. Now we only have one carrier on our phones, and then we have an option for another phone with another carrier. But I lose service in my phone quite a bit, but through video, I rarely lose any service anymore.
It with Skype or something instead of phone signal just for the audio?
Now, when it comes to losing the signal on the phone, you can go through FaceTime through the we have a couple different cell carriers that we use as air cards, and usually we'll have one or the other that's operating, and we can usually go through FaceTime through that to get audio. I call it FaceTime, but it's just audio part. So.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit about basic setup though in the vehicle, like what equipment you have. You mentioned the different video signals it can take. But talk a little bit about, you know, what you use to stream the video. Is it just FaceTime? Is it, you know, from an iPad, stuff like that?
Yeah. No, I have a HD. It's a Sony HD camera in the truck. Pretty nice camera, but we go through a unit called the DeGiro unit, and that unit takes 5 or 6 carriers, and basically, I'm not an engineer, so I don't understand how it works, but it'll take the best signal, and it'll through all the carriers and take that and force it through the bandwidth, and then it re-separates it once it gets to the station, and it really is amazing if y'all know anything about it. But what's amazing is we hardly ever lose the video part, so that's really improved the quality of the broadcast.
Is that in the backpack style of?
It can be, but it's hardwired in my vehicle.
Gotcha.
It's hardwired with you know, you've got your inverter in there. It's a huge inverter that powers it, and of course all the other little extras that go along with it that the inverter has to power. But it's quite a setup to undertake. You know, paying for it's quite a pretty penny, but it works well. Works very well.
Speaking of paying for, I mean, how much, you know, gas money and miles and stuff do you guys usually go through in a typical chase day?
If I travel west, usually when I go west, I'll help out for our sister station down in Oklahoma City, and so they'll kind of move me wherever they want to. But when I say west, that usually means, if you're familiar with Oklahoma, west of Oklahoma City, probably 60, 70, up to 100, 120 miles west of there. So, you know, you bring the storms in, and as it falls, Tulsa is usually the last to get hit. So we're usually out from, you know, let's say noon and waiting for the storms to go up, which is usually 3 to 5 or somewhere in there, and then just follow them all the way back to Tulsa. But miles wise, I think the biggest day this year, and this is just in a single day, I mean, like I said, leaving at 12 and getting back at maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, but I think I put on about 800 miles on the biggest day this year.
Oil changes are a pretty common thing in the vehicle, I imagine.
He loves me. Yeah, my old guy loves me.
So, you know, with Tulsa being a little bit further east in Oklahoma City and storms often blowing up there, do you guys run into issues with nighttime chasing a lot?
It seems like it's all the time nighttime around here. Of course, Oklahoma City, you get them in the rush hour time frame, and then it's if we get something during the middle of the day, and I say it's usually, but it seems like it's always at night, but it's not. I mean, of course, we've had our share of tornadoes during the day, so you know, it just really basically where those boundaries set up, and seems like it's usually west of Oklahoma City.
And when it comes to nighttime chasing, I mean, what changes? Do you guys stream anything differently? Is it more of maybe not so much video and kind of just reports?
Video is always used. It's what drives it. As long as you've got lightning, as long as you've got something that viewers can see, that's good. But the only thing that changes for me at nighttime is I leave a little bit more distance between me and the storm, and I just because, you know, nothing's worth your life, so I keep my distance and try to you know, sometimes you get caught where you're not supposed to be, but you know, try to leave the distance and go from there.
With practice.
Yeah.
Transition a little bit from that maybe into a few stories, and everyone else on the panel, feel free to jump in anytime if you have any additional questions. But you mentioned moments where, you know, maybe you get a little too close. Ever have one of those?
Yeah, of course. Any chaser is going to have those moments that come up once in a while, and fortunately they haven't been on major storms. But yeah, it's just a fact of chasing that you're going to get caught in the wrong spot, or in baseball size hail or, in 90, 100-mile-an-hour winds. So usually it's just the rear flank downdraft that'll get you. But, there's been a couple times that it's been in the area of circulation. But that's when you just know your road options and you bust whichever way is the best way to go.
Now, in the situation that a civilian is out there, so not anyone who's trying to chase, they just are in the storm, don't know that it's coming, what advice would you give to, like, how to get out of it or find a safe place?
Are you talking about Kit in a car or mobile home or
like
all the
if they're
above?
out on the road or like even in a mobile home, like if there's mostly when they're out on the road and they don't know where they should go.
Yeah, that's always tough because, as chasers, it's natural to know what the day of which way the storm's going to be moving. Pretty much how fast they're going to be moving. There's times that changes, but the general public doesn't keep up with that. They're not going to know that. So that's always a tough question. And I always say if you're in imminent danger, get out of your car and find a culvert, something. I would even crawl in one of those tin horns, because I don't care about the water, and I tell them, it may be kind of scary, but it's just you want to get out of the vehicle, because if all of y'all have probably seen the aftermath of even an F3 taking a vehicle and making it look like a piece of junk metal.
All right, let's see if I can stay connected now. I think maybe we can do that. I know Ricky was just talking about some of your chasing experiences. Vaughn, what was your month of May 2013 like? Were you all over the Oklahoma City storms? Were you in other storms during that month of those major tornadoes that did hit the area?
Yeah, that was one of the few days in 2013 that we did have tornadoes. I mean, like I was mentioned earlier, you were offline, but it was a pretty inactive year that year. Besides the fact that we had, those few days that we had some major tornadoes. But yeah, I was on all of those. The Moore tornado, I was on. I have a cousin that his house got hit for the third time, and went down and stayed with him that night. He had a roof, part of his roof was gone, so we helped put up, tarps and stuff like that. Then that allowed me to get out the next morning when nobody else could get in and do some filming and all of that kind of stuff. But the Edmond day, not the Edmond day, I'm sorry, the El Reno day, I was actually on a storm that was just north. If you remember, if you remember that day, storms were supposed to fire on a kind of a north to south line, and they did, except it was, basically telling Charlie that did anything, which was the one that went through El Reno. And I was on a storm that was north of that, about around Guthrie, and it was a pretty bad storm, but nothing near what the El Reno storm was like.
Do you have any personal stories or anything that kind of just stick out through that day of things that you saw, or as the chaser community, maybe how you guys communicated back and forth?
One of the heartbreaking stories that I the morning after the Moore tornado, I got up really early and started walking through the damage, and there was of course you can imagine what kind of damage. There was some places that the foundations were all that was standing. Then there were other places where the house was just a big pile of rubble. And I came up on a house that you could not tell where the driveway was, but there was a car or truck sitting in the driveway, and there was a woman in it. And so I went up, and it was the vehicle hadn't been moved, and since the storm, but she rolled down her window, and I said, "Are you all right, ma'am?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm just waiting here on my husband." And I said, "Have you been there all night?" And she said, "Yes. I've just sat here all night." So it's just heartbreaking, the people that are affected by that kind of stuff. And I imagine she was kind of in a shock because the areas that was hit wasn't very far away from the last tornado that went through there. But anyway, it's sad stuff to see, but that's why we're out there, and we hope that by our presence and all the other chasers that give good information, that lives are saved.
Speaking of that, and again, I'm sorry if I repeat anything. I have a list of questions here, and I hate that I got knocked offline there just a little bit ago. But speaking of giving those accurate sites of what you see out in the field, how is your relationship with the National Weather Service offices there in the areas of Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and how do you guys relay information to them? And also, how do you guys in the media? I know you work for a news station, but I believe I also heard that you do some other work for some guys maybe in Oklahoma City. Is that correct?
Yeah. The our sister station in Oklahoma City, we work really well together, both of us. But usually, our best way of getting information to the National Weather Service is by relaying it back to the station. And what they do, they're in what we have. There's a thing called the National Weather Service chat room, which some of y'all know about. But immediately when we're on with our station, pretty much the time, if it's an active day, from the time we leave the station till the time we go home, we're on a constant call with them, and it's a system that all the chasers can get on with the station, and you can hear everybody else talking and talk back and forth to each other. So the station immediately gets our report, and then they immediately put it in the chat room, and that puts it out to the National Weather Service chat room, and that lets them see it and either issue warnings or LSRs or whatever else needs to be issued.
And if I'm not mistaken, you guys, I've seen in the past, you actually go on live. Many of the on-air meteorologists will actually pull up your stream, and you guys will be broadcasting as they're doing the updates for the warnings in particular counties on the storms.
Yeah, they can go live to us at any time. We have a system that the station can actually see our live video as long as we got it turned on. As soon as we turn it on, all we have to do is point the camera. And that really helps out because, as we know these days, with all the problems with distracted driving, it really helps just to be able to turn the camera on and you're live. So that above all has helped us as chasers with the station to stay safer, and actually, the station can actually see more of what's going on.
I know watching some of the video of the Oklahoma City stuff, there for a few storms, I know it kind of got confusing for some of the on-air meteorologists with different chasers kind of talking over one another and stuff like that. I imagine on those high-impact days where there's 2 or 3 tornadoes on the ground, it can become quite chaotic and confusing for you guys when you're trying to report on one storm but someone else is on another storm.
Yes and no, because we take it for granted here that we've been in this business a long time. Next year will be my 30th year that I started chasing. So the on-air meteorologists have gotten so good at keeping all the chasers, and that the phone line I was talking about just a while ago, it's called a Comrex or a Getner. You probably heard the term Getner before, but what it does is it allows all the chasers to call in, and then one guy monitors all of those lines, and he can talk to each chaser, and all the other chasers can hear what he's saying to one chaser. So everybody knows what everybody's doing, and everybody knows where everybody is. And the on-air meteorologist has gotten really good, both of them. Travis Meyer, which is in Channel 6, and then David Payne, which is at Channel 9. They are so good at basically, let's go to Darren, let's go to whoever, and it's kind of funny because we just this year we had a chaser meeting in March. Actually, it was in February, right before the March tornado that went through Sand Springs, Oklahoma, which is just a suburb of Tulsa. And we worked it out to how we wanted to do it. If we wanted to break in, if we had an immediate, threatening situation, how to break in, and so it worked out really well. So it does, and it takes a good meteorologist on air to do that too.
And Vaughn, are you doing most of your meteorology to get to the storm out in the field, or are they still directing you from the station?
No, we kind of at the beginning of the day, we have a lot of sources, of course, all the models that you look at and the HRRR and all that. But I'll get input from the station, and I'll get input from my brother, who is the one I trust most, really. But and then we'll pick out an area for. We'll get with our other chasers, and our meteorologists will get with us and say, look, I want you to cover this one, you to cover this area, and you to cover this area to start out with. Now, nothing ever goes as planned in severe weather, so you have to be, mobile and not have to stay in a certain area, but you got to go with the storms. And if there's a major storm, getting ready to and come up on a major city, then we're going to have everybody on it. And that's just the way it happens. And usually that's not going to happen. You're not going to have 3 or 4 storms coming up. Let's say from Bartlesville to Tulsa to Henrietta. Usually that doesn't happen. Hopefully it'll never happen. But once you get on a storm, you don't need anybody input from anybody. I don't ever use my radar once I get on a storm. You're using visual clues, and only when something occludes and you can't really see where the new updraft is, that's when I go back to radar. And the station really is only there to maybe tell us if it's decreasing tremendously and we need to fall off of it and go get another storm that's coming up towards our area.
And you mentioned just slightly putting you in a spot at the beginning today. Are most of the chasers divided into like sections where put one in the northeast side and one on the southeast side of the forecast zone, or where you think it'll initiate?
Yeah, we want to try to have it all from let's say they put out a moderate risk from Wichita down to Oklahoma City to over to McAllister and back over to Little Rock or something. We'll have people all the way from McAllister to Stillwater, to the Oklahoma line up there, and have it all covered. And then when storms do start breaking out, then you just kind of start mingling towards certain storms that are in your area.
Vaughn, one thing that I know you probably don't have too much experience with is, but something that I see as far as watching the streaming coverage online and stuff is helicopters play a big factor in what you guys do out there storm chasing wise. That's something that I honestly believe that only Oklahoma and Texas and those locations are the only stations that utilize that. Talk to us a little bit about how those helicopters are important with your storm chasing, especially those out there that are a little bit further than the major metropolitan areas.
Yeah, the chopper, I think all 3 stations in Oklahoma City have a chopper. We're the only station in Tulsa that has a chopper. And choppers are so helpful. I don't know if I'd have the guts to be one, but I sure would like to go up in one time with them. But the video you can get from the chopper is just amazing, and they really help out especially on damage afterwards. But on the right storms, they can really get good footage of the tornado and all that, all that kind of stuff. So they're very useful, and I love it that we have one. I just want to go up in it one day.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the tornado that touched down in Moore, Oklahoma in March of this year that was the first visual that people got to see was the helicopter flying over the Moore area. So those are very beneficial. And a little bit, and you may have touched on this a little bit earlier. You guys had a tornado that came precariously close to downtown Tulsa earlier this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the Sand Springs tornado
Okay.
in March that I was talking about. Yeah, it Sand Springs is a community just west of Tulsa, and yeah, it did some damage. We actually had one fatality that happened in a mobile home. So it just lifted before it got to downtown area, and it touched down a couple times after that, but Tulsa dodged a big bullet that day.
Yeah, Joey and I actually was in Tulsa earlier this year, back at the first part of March, and we remember going down 44 there and seeing downtown, and we're like, man, that's kind of a vulnerable area that you can see that tornadoes may have a chance to hit the Tulsa area.
Don't bite me.
Yeah, they usually, like we were saying earlier, is the storms usually move right up 44, or in that general direction. So Tulsa's right on the hit list after dark, after they move through the Oklahoma City area. So
now I want to pop back to the topic about helicopters. You were saying how useful their footage was, but they might be very useful, but they're also very expensive. So where would you see the potential of drones, which has taken a lot of popularity recently? How would you see just amateur drone video working?
well, that's the next big thing to hit weather is drones, and I'm really looking forward to the first time that we can actually use them and get our hands on them to help us. It's a very exciting field that's going to be up and coming. And I just saw something. I was talking with Darren today. He just saw something. He said in 5 years that looks like drones are predicted it's going to be like a cell phone. Everybody's going to have one.
Yeah, I've got one, and I'm looking to find another one. But one thing I'd like to do is take an expendable one to a small tornado, hopefully, so I can recover it. But just tornado, see what it's like in there.
Yeah, that would be fun to see that video.
Speaking of Darren, I think Darren has got us there. Can you hear us, Darren?
I believe he's muted right now.
Darren, up at your taskbar, there'll be a microphone up there. If you can press that, you should be able to unmute yourself. I think he just sent me a message. I don't think it's working. So we'll kind of see behind the scenes if we can get Darren up and going. But talking about your chasing there. But there has been some stuff in the past where they're saying that some chasers get really close, closer than they ought to. What are the pros and the cons of chasing? I mean, you do this as your gig. You kind of know the ins and outs of it. But for those who maybe here in the Carolinas or up in the Northeast who are not associated with storm chasing, we get thunderstorms or isolated tornadoes move through, but we don't really have those big tornado outbreaks like you guys do. Kind of tell us a little bit about the pros and even some of the cons. I know sometimes those roads can get very crowded out there, so I know that would be one of the cons against it.
Yeah, they're starting to get more and more crowded. It's amazing to go out west and you're 50 miles away from a town, and I know these farmers are freaking out because there's traffic jams on the little roads that never have more than 2 cars that go through there in a whole day. But I mean that's literally, I've seen that. It was, I could not get out on the road. There were so many chasers going by, you couldn't pull out on the road. But that's the cons. But you know what? I'm out there because I love to see Mother Nature and God's work. I mean, it's a beautiful a thunderstorm, as y'all all know. A supercell thunderstorm is just an amazing sight, and thankfully these days we're getting more and more pictures of all that on Twitter and Facebook and all that. But it's a con, but you never want to discourage somebody from going out and looking at that kind of stuff. But then again, you also want to warn them that it's not just a simple thing, and it's very dangerous, and as evident by back in 2013, so with the chasers getting killed. But hopefully, one of these days, I see it coming. They're probably going to start licensing it. I don't want to see that happen, but that may be coming one of these days. But I don't know. We'll keep chasing until they go that way.
That's an interesting debate, though, because being a chaser yourself, how do you see them possibly ever doing that?
That's a really good
question, but
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in an event like that, a major event happening, you really can't regulate that kind of stuff. But I don't know. That's a very difficult question and very hard to answer.
Maybe I see it as maybe like boating licenses. You probably won't check it every time you're out there in the lake, but if you get caught without one, you could be in a boatload of trouble. Pun not intended, but appropriate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think enforcing that law would probably be the most difficult thing. Vaughn, I had a question. You mentioned Val earlier. My question, I don't know if you guys have the same story or similar stories, but how did you guys get into storm chasing to begin with?
Well, that was back in '86. I was in college, and I had a job while I was going in college, mainly because I wanted to buy me the newest thing out, which was the bag phone, and so I bought me one, and when he found out I had it, he conned me into going with him chasing, because he said we can call back to KWTV, Gary England, and he'll be able to tell us where the storms are, and that way we can get set up on storms, and then of course go to your paper maps and follow roads. And so I agreed with him. He said Gary would pay me back. My back then it was per minute charge, so it could get quite lengthy and quite expensive. And anyway, that's how it all started. I went on one chase and pretty much hooked.
Wow. Speaking of Gary, we've had Gary on this show. We love hearing Gary England stories. And I can imagine how long your phone call was probably with him.
Well, I tell you what, if next time you have him on there, I still haven't got repaid for that 1986 cell phone bill, so I need to run that by him.
We'll make that happen. Next
Just
time,
don't end up punching him in the face like that football player.
Hey, Joey, if I'm not mistaken, we have dinner reservations with Gary next February, so we'll make sure to bring that up, and maybe he can pay for that that building.
We do. Here's what we're gonna do. Vaughn, make sure you come to the Tornado Summit next year, and we're gonna go meet Gary for lunch. Then we'll just bring you in on him.
Well, I'm not gonna hold my breath on getting paid back, so
it'll be great. I had another question. Now I done forgot it. We got off on that Gary England subject there. You said.
Go ahead, Jay.
You said you got started back in '86 and with the paper maps and things like that. I know we could talk a whole show about how things have evolved for chasers, but I mean, what are some of the big changes that have really helped you in chasing? Say from those maps to having mobile radar and things like that. I mean, what are some of the big changes from back then to today?
It doesn't even compare. I mean, it's night and day difference. It's like going from horse and buggy to a car. Of course, cell phones, and then the internet cards were the next big thing with GPS. being able to follow your position, and those are, having a good GPS, I think, is almost as important as having a cell phone, because I always tell people when we're talking about chasing that you always have to have two ways out of wherever you're going, and the only way you can really do that is have an up-to-date GPS and one that you can trust. So the GPS is the biggest asset in my truck.
Yeah, I tell people all the time. I tell guys, I said, I remember the days we used to actually chase. I had a pager, and we had a code. I had somebody at home watching radar at a code. They would page me certain numbers to let me know like where the storm was headed and things like. It was really anyway.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it worked. It worked for a while. I know, Ricky, we kind of got into it a little bit earlier, and I was just going to bring it up again. He talks about maybe being too close to a storm. Can you think of a time that you were too close? Maybe tell us a little story about what happened and maybe what got you in that position, how you got out of it.
Yeah, probably the most scared that I was it was one of the tornadoes that came up the turnpike from Oklahoma City to Tulsa, and it wasn't May 3rd, 99, and it wasn't 2013, but it was I think it was 01 or 03, one of the other times that more got hit. But if you know what the turnpike is, it's basically you have 4 or 5 exits from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. You can't get off of it. You got to stay on it. So
trust me, I know about that. I had to use
yeah,
we tried to find a bathroom and there was no bathroom to be found.
Well, that's when you make your own. So
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to. Joey knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, for everybody out there that doesn't know what we're talking about, it's basically a pay for a road, and you got to pay toll at one end or the other, and or in the middle, whichever way it may be. But there's only about, on the Turner Turnpike, there's only about 6 or 7 exits, and you're pretty much stuck on the road. So when you're chasing, you usually don't want to get on the toll roads for that reason. But this one I had really no choice, because it was coming up the turnpike just to the south and of the turnpike. This turnpike runs kind of east and west, but so I had to basically go up the turnpike, and it was at nighttime, and and this was earlier. I mean, like I said, I think it was 01, so 15 years ago. I didn't have near as much experience as I had now, and I got caught in some RFD that was at least 100 miles an hour, and I really thought I was in the edge of the circulation. And if you also know the turnpike, there's a middle border or barrier that goes down the middle of the turnpike, and the rain was blowing across that so hard that it was literally, just sideways. It was going sideways, and it was rocking the truck. And that, I got off at the next exit, and I headed south, and I just kind of got composed and then caught back up with it as it moved into Tulsa. But the nighttime stuff is definitely the most scary stuff, because you don't have the visual clues that you get during the daytime.
Vaughn, I'm not sure if you covered this event, but I know Joplin, Missouri isn't too far from you guys. Were you in on any of those storms?
No, that day we also had some tornadic storms just east of Tulsa, and we were on those storms that set down, I believe, about Locust Grove area, which is east of Tulsa. About Highway 69 is where they were, where the tornadic storms were. But we had several of them sit down in that area, and I just remember seeing some of the first footage out of the Joplin, and it was such an odd situation. It wasn't, I don't remember what kind of risk we had that day, but afterwards, looking at the data and stuff, looking at that, there was a boundary laying right there that had you known what to look for, and had you known a storm was going to develop up there, you probably would have been in a really good position to be on that one. But now that was a heartbreaking day for all the people in Joplin.
Yeah, Vaughn, I know, speaking of another storm chaser, that Joplin storm, always stands out to me is Jeff Petrowski's video when he gets there, and he's almost like the first person there after the storm goes through, and he's running into that neighborhood that's just trashed. He's checking cars for people and things like that. Have you ever run into an experience like that where you're basically the first person there and you almost have to go into like a search and rescue kind of thing?
Yeah, we I don't remember what year it was, but the tornado that hit Clinton, Arkansas, we were on that storm, and we were the first persons basically to come up on some of the worst damage. And you do what you can as a chaser to get out and help people. You can't. It's a lot of the times you're going to be blocked by debris anyway, so you're going to waste your time trying to get around it and trying to catch up with storms. So you get out and you help as many people as you can and do what you can for the first responders and basically a lot of the storm chasers become first responders on situations like that. But you try to help out the police and the fire departments and all that, and do whatever you can for them, and hopefully save a life or at least help somebody out.
Yeah, be an extra body. That's what I always tell people whenever you come into a situation like that. Be an extra person that can help move something, do something.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? This year they put on our trucks. They our station put on a bunch of lights, a bunch of LED lights, and we had several tornadoes early this year up in the northeastern part of our state that we were the first people on the scene, and so we lit up the whole scene with these LED. You all know what I'm talking about, those bright LED lights. And we got, on my truck I have 6 different bars, so you can actually light up a whole damage scene and help out from first responders in search and rescue.
Wow.
Vaughn, our good buddy Brad Kanovich, chief meteorologist at NBC Charlotte, he was talking to us a little bit. We were in a meeting, I don't know, it was about several months back or whatever, before we got into our severe weather season here in the Carolinas, and he was talking about he used to storm chase, and one of the biggest things that's really helped him out throughout his career is being able to be out in the field and seeing how the clouds are going and seeing the boundaries and stuff. How much on hand or in-field experience have you learned dealing with weather to help you be able to chase these storms? I mean, how much is it just learning by as you go, or looking at models and maps and stuff like that? How much do you rely on just looking at the sky above you and saying, well, I think I need to start heading east or what have you?
Yeah, the day of, let's just say the day of the event, I don't really put a lot of faith in a lot of the models before that, but, because so much can change. Of course, everybody knows when there's going to be some possibility of something happening, but the day of the event, then that's when you kind of get your boundaries in place. You can, whether they be a wind shift boundary or a dew point, tongue of the dew point coming up, boundary type of thing. Anywhere where there's lift is where you want to be at. But as soon as storms start forming, you see the the cumulus starting to build here and there. Coming up, and usually you can feel it's that kind of day, and everybody knows what that kind of day feels like. It's warm and sticky, but once the storms go up, you're really relying on what you see with the storm and the base of the storm, and of course all the wind directions around the edge of the storms. And I don't have a meteorology degree, but I've learned most of what I know by just being out there and chasing with my brother all those early years, and then chasing for the station for the last however many years I've been chasing for them.
Now, I've got one to start wrapping things up. If there was one thing about storm chasing, whether it be the people or the technology, if there's one thing you could change about what you've been doing for so many years, what would it be?
One thing change. Wow. I don't know that I would change anything at all. I think if anything, I would go back and I would concentrate more on my math in school. That's what I would have done, because I was never very good in math, and as a meteorologist, all you meteorology students know that, or meteorologists know that math is number one. What you got to be good at in the meteorology.
Preaching to the choir.
So yeah, but my degree from college was in English, so that math part of my side of my brain just didn't work very well. But anyway, that's what I would do. I think I'd be more study a little bit more and go to a few more classes in college, so don't skip out on them, and be a little bit more knowledgeable.
Well, Vaughn, we had a whole discussion earlier about the use of a and before the letter H in hour, or in hour, yeah. Do you use a hour or an hour? Since you have an English degree, you can answer that for us, right?
In the debate right now.
I would say an hour.
An hour, okay. See, I had
there it is.
Yeah, see, I had a teacher in high school that completely told me that was absolutely wrong, and I got in a big argument with her about that, but I was right. But anyway, as we wrap up, I have a final question I always ask all of our guests, but I had actually a couple other ones I wanted to ask you even before that. You talk about working with different television stations and things like that, and I hate to call out one person over somebody else, but who is maybe one meteorologist that's in the field that you've really worked well with? One person that you had a really good relationship with.
Well, I tell you, that's hands down my brother. He does have a meteorology degree, and he has been the one that has taught me everything I know. Really, I mean, and then of course with the internet coming along, then that has been my big source of, it's just getting on and studying things and looking at patterns and past tornadoes and I've spent hours and hours just researching little things that doesn't mean anything to anybody except for me, and that's really how I've got my knowledge.
One other question before I get to my final question. I mean, this is probably the same answer. It's probably still going to be your brother. Who was one of your colleagues, one of your other chase people that you always tend to look up to?
Darren is a great chaser. I wish he was on the call with us, but Darren he actually grew up in Moore, and so his fascination with weather has been from a young age. And when we first started chasing together at 6, we just kind of hit it off, and pretty much been a team the whole time since he started chasing with 6. So he's a great chaser. There's several good chasers around. There's another one in here in Muskogee that I wish was chasing with our group, but Ron Morton, and he's been in the weather business for, he's a banker, but he's been a weather geek for, back in the 80s. He's my age, and so there's a lot of good knowledge around, a lot of good chasers. So it's just a fun, something you look forward to. Y'all know that. You look forward to it every spring or every fall, and hopefully this fall we'll get a few storms here and there.
No doubt. All right, well, like I said, I always pose this last question to all of our guests, everybody in the weather enterprise. We have a lot of students that watch our show, even teachers who are elementary teachers who have kids who are really interested in weather, and that's what they want to get into, either as a meteorologist, some storm chasers for that matter. What's the one piece of advice you could give a teacher for a student, or either a student who wants to, continue into weather? What's the one piece of advice that you can give them going forward?
Well, me and Darren, we do a lot of little classes for elementary schools, and go in there and do a little weather presentation, and we do it almost every year for several different schools around here, and that's a good question, and it's one we get every time we go. But my main thing is I will tell them to stay, be knowledgeable in all areas, but math, like I said earlier, your math area is so important in meteorology, and maybe not as important these days, but still very, very important. And your interest towards it, if you love something, you're going to find a way to do it. And there's all kinds of ways to get involved in meteorology or chasing. You just got to stay with it and not give up.
Yeah, no doubt. I got started chasing when I was 14. I found a friend who had a car and made him drive.
That's great.
So we always find a way. That's a great answer. I'll be honest with you. I think 90% of all of our guests have said to make sure you study math. So that's definitely a big one. That's all the questions I think I have. Scotty looks like he dropped off. Ricky, you want to wrap up the end of the show here?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Basically, wow. Mind fart, I'm sorry. I wasn't much better than Joey could have been there. Anyway, usually we shoot this show every Wednesday night, and sometimes we don't shoot it on Wednesday night because we have other things that come up, like last couple of weeks, but Val, or I'm going to continue to call you Val for as long as I can. I'm sorry, Vaughn.
That's all right.
You're both awesome people, and I'm sure you love your brother very much, and we'd love to have him on too, but we appreciate you coming on tonight and telling us a little bit about your storm chasing adventures and just what life's out in Oklahoma.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate being on here.
All right. Come back anytime. We'd always love to have you back.
Now, Vaughn,
right.
if you want to go ahead and plug your social media before you go so that people can follow you on that.
Oh, yeah. It's at Vaughn D. Caster, which is VON D and CASTOR. So I'm pretty much just a Twitter guy. I don't do a whole lot of Facebook.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm horrible. I followed you from the Carolina Weather Group page, and I never followed you from my own personal page. But I remedied that tonight.
All right, thanks, Joey.
I knew I'd followed you because I see your stuff. I realized it was always on because I usually follow the Carolina Weather Group Twitter page, and I'd never followed you from my personal page. So.
All right. Well, thank y'all. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, we definitely like to do this again. Maybe really dive into some of the really hard questions about the future of chasing, and like you were talking about going to license or what might occur if some of the things keep going the way they are and things like that. A whole nother show and a whole nother topic, but I think that's something we want to get into down the road.
Yeah, I can't do any of those shows that have hard questions. That's beyond mine.
We'll bring your brother in and we'll beat him up too. Then that way.
That sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Rich, do you have a list of what's coming up? I don't have it in front of me.
I do not have a list because usually you go about making those shows, but
I do. But Scotty usually has the list, so I don't pay attention to it.
Well, I promise you that if you tune in next week, we'll have another exciting edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Well, maybe I'll remember what to say at the end of the show, and Scotty will be able to hang on through all of it.
Yeah, Scotty always keeps his list. I mean, I know we just recently booked Brad Panovich and Steve Udelson to come on later next month. I think we've got that. I know we got Brian Busby from the Kansas City market who's going to come on with us. That's also later next month. Those are just a couple shows I made recently, so I remember those. But
well, I just pulled up the YouTube channel on my phone. We've got the recap of the AMS conference coming up in a couple weeks. Also, the GOESR satellite launch with Rob Eichler and Tony Rice coming up at the end of August or beginning of September. Got some hurricane events coming up, and the one that Joey just talked about.
All right. Well, that's another week of the Carolina Weather Group. Hopefully we see you guys next Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. Remember, you can also download this podcast and all of our previous podcasts on your favorite podcast app or view any of our shows on the YouTube channel. As for that, bicycle.